Okay, so the topic you've all been waiting for, the mathematics of dating or stable marriage. Okay, and the scenario is, the usual bipartite graph. So you've got Alice, Barb, and Carla, who are interested in dating Xavier, Yariv, and Zach. Okay, so boys, girls. And let's look at this very simplified scenario. Okay. And in principle, everyone could date everyone else. Okay, so there are potential links, there are potential edges, from everyone on the left to everyone on the right. And at the end of the day, we need to set up a set of marriages or we partner people up together, let's say for life. Okay, and let's imagine that we have picked, X with A, Y with B, okay, and Z with C. So any matching would do. Okay, so we have picked the marriages X to A, Y to B, and Z to C. Okay, so what's different between what we did with, tasks and resources? What's different is now we're going to add a new ingredient, which is preferences. So, before, tasks couldn't care less which resource performed them. Okay, but now people care about who they date. So people have preferences. And one way to represent preferences is using what's called preference lists. So our boys and our girls, they have preference lists. So X likes A, then B, then C, in that order. Similarly, everyone has a preference list. Y likes A, then C, then B. Z likes B, then A, then C. And similarly, A likes Z, then Y, then X. B likes Y, then X, then Z. C likes Z, then X, then Y. Okay, so everyone has a preference list. Now in practice, nobody publishes their preference list. Malik doesn't go out to the world and say, okay, among all you 10,000 people, this is the order in which I prefer, and then let's go and make stable marriages. No, okay. Everyone has their preference list. I'm listing them just so that we can see what's going on. Okay, in particular, what I want to highlight is the pair of marriages, X to A and Y to B. Okay, now why am I highlighting this? Because, okay, X and A are married, so they're holding hands and walking down the street. Okay, and then Y and B are married, and they're holding hands and walking down the street, that same street. Okay, and Y looks at A and says, I'm married to B, so Y is married to B, but wow, does Y prefer A to B much more? Okay, so Y would prefer to be attached to A. Okay. And does A reciprocate? So A is walking down the street with X and notices Y and looks at her preference list and says, you know what, X, I don't really like X. Why am I hooked up with X? Look, there's Y over there, and I prefer Y to X. So I prefer X. A would prefer to be with Y. Now this is the potential for an explosion. Okay? Because look, A and Y both prefer each other to their current partners. Okay? A and Y prefer each other to their current partners. That's asking for an explosion. We call this a volatile pair. Volatile pair of marriages. And what's going to happen here is this is a very unstable situation. X and A are going to explode, Y and B are going to explode, and X and A are going to hook up. And let's look at what happens to X. Well, X much prefers, A to B, for example. That would leave X and B unpaired, so maybe they can pair up. But X would much rather be with A, okay? And B would much rather be with Y. Okay, B prefers Y to X, but that's irrelevant. They're not the decision makers in this explosion. It's that, all you need is one volatile pair who prefers to be with each other rather than their current partners, and you've got an explosion. Okay, so when we assign the marriages, to have a stable society, we would certainly like there to be no volatile pairs. So the marriages are what we call stable. So we want no volatile pairs. Okay, so this assignment of X to A and Y to B and Z to C is not stable. It's not viable. Okay. Now, interestingly, in society, we would certainly like to have a set of stable marriages. So you might think, we have a dating algorithm, then we all go out, we date, we get married, and so on and so forth. Okay. Does that dating algorithm result in stable marriages? Okay. Well, I don't know, but I'm going to show you an algorithm that can accomplish that can accomplish stable marriages. It's a very simple algorithm, and it doesn't even need to know the lists of everyone ahead of time. So everyone just knows their own list and makes decisions for themselves. Okay? And this is an algorithm that is very similar to, like dating that occurred, 500 years ago in the time of Shakespeare and, when men wooed women. Okay? So I'm going to show you this dating ritual. We'll call it a ritual because I don't know if it still exists today. Okay? And in this dating ritual, you've got balconies. Okay? And this is my attempt to draw balconies. You've got some balconies, and some people are standing on the balconies. So let's assume that the women are standing on the balconies, because that's how it happened 500 years ago. Well, the women would stand on the balconies, A, B, and C. Okay. And then on the terrace below, the men would come and read poetry and woo them. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the dating game where men are going to woo women who are standing on balconies. Okay, and see what happens. Okay, so let's call this the dating ritual. The dating ritual. Okay, and what are the men going to do? Well, every man is going to be somewhat rational. The women are on balconies, so I'm going to pick a woman to woo. So on day one, okay, each man picks a woman who they're going to woo. Okay. And what's the natural thing to do? Each man consults their list of preferences and clearly is going to go for the top choice. Okay. So this actually leads to a little bit of a problem because X and Y will both go and try to woo A. Okay. So X and Y are both there trying to woo A. Maybe they get into a fight or something. Who knows? But let's assume they read poetry. Okay. And then Z goes and woos B. So Z is wooing B. And what happens to C? C is all alone on the balcony. Might as well just go and do Fox homework or something. Okay? So C is all alone on day one. Poor C. No wooing going on for C. Okay. Now the interesting thing happens at the time of the wooing. So B has got a single suitor, but A has two suitors. So A is going to do the rational thing, right? A is going to tell, one of these guys, bye-bye. Okay. And so let's see what A will do. So A has a choice between X and Y. Okay. And so clearly A prefers Y. So A says bye-bye to X. Bye-bye, X. X is gone. X has been told, you're no longer needed here. Okay. So, X, angry as hell, never to be seen near A again, completely wipes A from his, memory and RAM and USB and social media and everything, completely wipes out A from his mind, from his history. So it just wipes A out. A no longer exists. A is dead to X. Okay. Now, another interesting thing comes when we think about what should A do with Y, what should B do with Z. The obvious thing to say is, hey, let's get married. No, don't be so rash. Don't be so quick. Be patient. Here's the game that A and B play. A says to Y, you know what? I like you. Come back tomorrow. You may be the one. That's a very different scenario to you are the one. Okay, so definitely A has rejected X, but doesn't necessarily accept Y. You may be the one. I like you. Let's come back tomorrow. And the same game is played by B. You know what? I like you. Why don't you come back tomorrow? Okay. So day 2 comes. And diligently Y comes back and Z comes back because they're A and B are respectively at the top of their lists. What does X do? Well, A is dead to X. Okay? So A looks at his list and says, you know what? I'm going to go and woo B because B is my next choice. So X pops up here to the dismay of Z. Okay? Because, we get the picture. C loves Fox and C is always doing Fox homework. Nobody to woo C. Okay, but why is this to the dismay of Z? Because now, A doesn't have a choice anymore, but B has a choice. Okay? B looks at X and Z. B looks at X and Z. You know what? I prefer X. So Barb says, bye-bye, Z. Bye-bye, Z. Okay, And Z, angry as all hell, wipes his hard drive clean of B. Social media, everything done. Okay, B is dead to Z. Okay, and same game. A tells what? I like you. Come back. Come back. We may be the match. And B says to X, I like you. Come back. Come back. We may be the match. Okay? And so diligently on day 3, Y comes back, X comes back, and C looks at the balcony but is starting to get the picture. Okay, Y comes back, X comes back. But what does Z do? Well, Z goes back to his list and picks A, who's now the current winner on his list. So Z picks A. Oh my goodness. Now we've got another competition between Z and Y. Okay, and who gets to choose? In this case, A gets to choose. And A looks at Z and Y, and now you see the patience of A has been rewarded because her top choice has come along. So bye-bye, Y. Okay, and Y, A, you are dead to me. Okay, and again, they play the same game. A says to Z, come back, you may be the one. Although A could, in fact, say, yes, let's get married, because A knows that nothing better is possible. But, we'll just play along. Come back, Z. You can date me a little more. And B says to X, come back. And, C is still doing the Fox homework, and day 4 comes along. 4 comes along, and Z diligently comes back, and X diligently comes back. And let's see, what does Y do? So Y looks back at his list, and now the current best is C. And so finally, C gets her first date. Okay. And now you see the situation is never going to change, right? Because they will just each say, come back to their corresponding suitors, and we're done. We've hit an equilibrium. And so we found the set of marriages, okay, A to Z, B to X, and C to Y. Okay, so couple of things. The first thing is that this dating ritual should look eerily similar to what goes on today in the dating circles and what went on 500 years ago and what has been going on for, millennia. This is the way boys date girls. Okay, and you might wonder, well, so one thing that you should take away from this is if that you're the girl, don't immediately catch on to the first thing that comes by. Tell them to come back. Tell them they may be the one. Let's date a little. Come back. Okay, so that's the first interesting thing that pops out of this algorithm. Okay, and the second interesting thing that pops out of the algorithm is, look, it ended. Okay, and it ended with every girl and boy matched. So nobody's left out in the end. And indeed, C would have ultimately gotten a match. Okay, so, observations. 1. The algorithm ended. Okay, and indeed, if there are n boys and n girls, one can show that, the number of days it takes for the algorithm to end is no more than n squared. So, O of n squared steps. Okay. And one way to see that is that at every step, at least one boy, if you're not already at equilibrium, at least one boy will cross off one girl from a list. And since the number of entries in this list is n squared, the algorithm cannot go on for more than n squared. And step 2, second observation, everybody gets matched. So no boy is left without a girl, and no girl is left without a boy. Well, if no boy is left without a girl, and girls are matched to at most one boy, then, since there are an equal number of both, both boys and girls are all, given matches. Okay. And, this is a very eerily, familiar algorithm. It's what's going on. And you might wonder, well, how did this evolve? Probably it evolved because it encourages stability in the society. Something must be right about this algorithm for this algorithm to have withstood the test of time. And indeed, it is possible to show that there are no volatile pairs in the resulting set of matches. There are no volatile pairs. In other words, the marriages are stable. Very interesting. So this dating ritual that has withstood the test of time is guaranteed to produce matches which are stable. Okay? The marriages that are produced have no volatile pair. So there's no potential for scandal if this algorithm is faithfully followed. Okay? So this is the content of a theorem. You can see the theorem in the book. It's the Gayle-Shapley theorem. Okay, and we more or less we can sort of, you know, the hard thing to prove is that there are no volatile pairs. And okay, so you can see the book for how to prove that. But there's one more interesting thing. Okay? It looks like the girls are in charge. It looks great that, you know, they're on top of the balconies waiting to pass judgment on their suitors who come along like little mice. Okay? And when the mice come, you know, they pick, you know, they tell some to, you know, to disappear, and they tell others to come back. So it looks like they have all the power. So the girls have all the power. Okay? But that's deceptive. Just because they have the power, they're the ones who look like they're the ones making the choices. They are the ones who lose. They get shortchanged. The girls get shortchanged. And what does that mean? So, it turns out that there are many ways to do stable marriage. There can be many ways to do stable marriage. And among all the possible stable marriages, so they get shortchanged, what that means is among all possible stable marriages, okay, the one that is produced here, okay, is the worst for the girls. So every girl is worse off. They cannot be more worse off in any other stable marriage. So this is the worst for the girls. But how is that possible? They have all the choice. Okay, they're the ones making the decisions. They have the power. In fact, and the opposite is true for the boys. Okay, among all the possible stable marriages, this is the best possible outcome for the boys. There's no other stable marriage in which any boy can be happier. So the boys got the best possible stable marriage, and the girls got the worst possible stable marriage. And what does that have to do with? That has to do with the fact that it's the boys who are wooing the girls. So it looks like the girls have power, but indirectly, it's actually the boys who have power. So while the girls seem to be making the decisions, before the girls get to make decisions, it's the boys who make a decision. So they go one by one through their list, starting from the top. Okay, so they get to, you know, and if their top works out, they got their top. If their top doesn't work out, they were never going to get their top. And so they go down to the next and then to the next. So they move through their list from best to worst, and where they end up is where they end up, and it's the best that they could have possibly accomplished. Okay. Well, the girls, meanwhile, actually, even though it looks like they have all the power, they're at the mercy of the boys. Because, you know, they get to decide, but they get to decide only over whatever shows up on their doorstep, like C. C only gets to choose between whatever shows up at her doorstep, and, you know, oh, well, Y showed up, and that's all I have. Okay? And so, even though you're making the choice, you're making the decision, you have to decide among usually the bad alternatives. For example, in the case of C, perhaps. Okay? And that's what's going on. Even though they make the decision, surreptitiously, the boys are making the first decision of who to woo. So they're going through their list from top to bottom. So what's the lesson? And you learned it here in Fox. It's a discrete math lesson. In this dating ritual, it's better to be the person wooing than the person being wooed. So, if you're engaging in this dating ritual, make the first step. You're the one who should be the one asking out. Whoever you are, whether you're the girl or the boy, make the first step. That's when you get the best outcome. Because you get to implement your list, not wait for whatever shows up and make a decision. You heard it here first. Okay, so let's erase, and we're going to come back and talk about coloring. That's another big ticket item.